Hey, financial freedom seekers, what message is my phone giving to me? Okay. Today it's again the second day of 2023, and today I'm doing a bit of weights training, but my message today is upon quiet reflection of Bitcoin's adoption. At New Year's, it's always a time for reflection, and what I'd love to share with you today is 7 steps that you can go through in playing your part around Bitcoin adoption. And I'm sharing it from my perspective of being involved and quietly reflecting upon Bitcoin being a quiet room of about 100 activists and crazy people and developers when I attended the first Bitcoin conference, to the point where it's pretty much everybody in the world at least has heard of Bitcoin. They may not know what it is or what how they use it, but at least everyone in the world has heard of it, which is an incredible achievement to have experienced that ever since I first got involved right in the early days. So I'm going to go through those 7 steps that I went through, and hopefully you can draw some inspiration around how you can be involved and how you can support your Bitcoin adoption in your unique way as we go through this world. And so the very first thing for me, the first step, was recognizing that this is a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift means a completely new way of organizing things in terms of the way that people think and do things. And so the traditional paradigm prior to Bitcoin, we had gold, then we had cash, and then we had digital money at a bank, and now we have digital gold, essentially. So it was about really understanding what is the vision. And so really early on, I was writing my book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future, Before Governments Go Bust. And I really wanted to condense down what it was. And when I spoke at the first Bitcoin conference in Prague, I was sharing these 3 things, and I've said them for over, 12, 13 years in many, many videos. But the vision was, the very first thing is understand the vision in a way that people could understand it. So to me, it made sense from the context of banking, because I was working on banking reform. I left my career in banking in 2006 to warn people about systemic risk in the financial system, and was giving talks on that. And the vision was money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply. So what does that actually mean? Well, prior to this, all money that you deposited at the bank becomes the legal owner. When they become the legal owner, they effectively spend it to you. They create an asset and a liability, do double bookkeeping, and it's a liability to you because they owe you the money, and then you can spend it, but at the same time they can use it, they can rehypothecate, they can spend it, and through this process they direct the flow of money creation, because the third thing is that they create it every time they issue a loan, so it's not based upon a fixed supply. So the vision was really simple. It's money you can own, i.e. you can self-custody it, just like you could own gold or cash in the past, but now a lot easier. Money you can spend, i.e. rather than having a financial institution in the middle, you can transact peer-to-peer. The records are on a blockchain, so therefore if you commit crime with it, there's an immutable record on the blockchain, but you can transact person to person without censorship in the middle, which makes the whole system a lot more honest. And finally, a fixed supply, a supply that cannot be changed, not be manipulated, because we have this concept of proof of work, where miners are there, mining every single transaction. They agree on consensus, and therefore there's no reversibility, no database that can be controlled by anybody, and a system that doesn't rely upon parties trusting each other, just playing by the rules of maths and code, based upon this expenditure of electricity that becomes so expensive that nobody can afford to take down the system or rig the system without an incredibly inefficient and virtually impossible, the more decentralized this network of computers becomes. And so that was really the vision. But prior to that, it was really geeky, trying to explain Bitcoin. But once I had a vision that I could explain, I could go on TV, I could do that. So have a real vision for what Bitcoin is to you and how you explain it, And today it's never been easier. Why? Because people are experiencing the problems of trying to access their money at a bank. They're experiencing a cost of living crisis as a result of money being created. Don't let the politicians get away with them telling you that this is because of Putin's war. Money is always inflation is always a monetary phenomenon. So it was the reaction to the change in the supply of the money that causes inflation as a result of COVID. And so don't let them tell you that different story. And also, as banks go bust or financial crisis happened, even in the crypto industry, when we created our crypto banks, everybody experiences the benefit through firsthand, as we go through bail-ins or whatever it may be. Bailouts obviously delays the pain and rolls it over to the next cycle, as we will experience. Okay, so the first thing is to have a compelling vision. The second is to seek answers in unlikely places. And so immediately after doing this, I went around lots of different places. In fact, I spoke, I did a tour with Jefferies Investment Bank. They pay me to go around and undo the work of an enemy at the time, which was Blythe Masters. Blythe Masters worked at JP Morgan on the executive team. She was the inventor of the credit default swap. And she did real early work to try and make sure that Bitcoin didn't get adoption by saying that it wasn't Bitcoin that was the innovation, it was the technology behind it, the blockchain, that banks could use. And therefore she saw it, and her vision was the way that I was wording it, was a way of banks committing more crime on a blockchain and publishing that data. And so she went round all the different people all around the world, all the different fund managers that were controlling the vast amount of wealth in the world, telling them that Bitcoin was nothing, it was dead, it was a scam, but the technology behind it, the blockchain, could be used by banks, and so they should stop using the word Bitcoin and start using the word blockchain. And we had this movement of blockchain versus, originally in Bitcoin we were there to take on the banks, give people alternatives, give people an exit from the traditional financial system. And Blythe Masters' vision was to try and get everybody, all the banks, to use the technology and obliterate Bitcoin. So Jefferies very fortunately asked me to answer the questions that the fund managers were not getting answered. So they sent me to Tokyo, they sent me to Singapore, they sent me to Hong Kong, they sent me to London, they sent me to Boston, San Francisco, LA and California, all these different various other places. I just did this massive tour and then later did a big tour across China in 18 different provinces with the commodities investor Jim Rogers separately to educate lots of people around Bitcoin. Now, what was interesting is rather than saying we're not going to speak to banks, I remember at the time Gavin Andresen gave a lecture to the CIA, and that was his exit when Satoshi left Bitcoin. Satoshi handed over the GitHub keys, the repository keys, to Gavin Andresen, and when he went and did a lecture at the CIA, Satoshi decided that was the time to leave the project as well. But I went and spoke at all the different investment banks. Now, what was fascinating is I was giving answers to questions that I would never get when I was just hanging out in the Bitcoin community. And so also, remember at the time, I was trying to create a bank. So Bank to the Future, originally, I quit investment banking. My wife and the co-founder, Bliss Dixon, came up with the vision. And she said, stop talking to politicians, stop talking to all these different types of people. And why don't you just create the bank that you says that it needs? So I got clear on my answers by writing the book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future Before Governments Go Bust. And then we started a business to try and create the bank, and we miserably failed. And so, at the time I realized that there was no way of allowing people to own their own money. We wanted to do it where it was like a custody account held in trust. and we wanted a direct account at the Bank of England. We couldn't get that. We had to build on top of another bank, and there was no way of not engaging in the fractional reserve system, so we had to create money every time if we got a banking license. So the vision was impossible at the time, but we sought answers in different places. And so we were really deep in debt at this time. We spent all of our money. We both had careers in banking, and we both quit our jobs. We were both giving lectures around, I was giving lectures around different universities on the topic. And then eventually we just decided to do it, put all of our money, but we took our last bit of credit card debt when Bliss persuaded me, because a guy called Amir Taki invited me to speak at the first Bitcoin conference. I was covering it in the book, and that led to us purchasing some Bitcoin at $3 at the conference and being involved in the industry. And because of that, we pivoted our business. So that is really the second step, is to seek answers wherever those wherever in the most unlikely places. So the next step really is to think about a paradigm shift and expect that there's going to be lots of pain along the way. So pain comes because when you're explaining these different things, it goes through the different cycles of adoption. The pain is that initially everyone ridicules you. So whenever we explain Bitcoin, everyone would ridicule you. Then they violently oppose it. This is when the banks were starting to go for blockchain, not Bitcoin. And then eventually it's accepted as self-evident. And so you can see that right now, where everybody's like saying, oh, crypto, everything is a scam. And therefore Bitcoin seems to be this thing that everyone accepts is self-evident and acts like a commodity, where everything else is a security. We're experiencing that right now. Okay, so you expect to go through a bit of pain. The other is rules. So now this is a really interesting one in the current environment. In order to get this right, you have to play within the rules, but also be willing to break the rules where it's intelligent to do so. Let me give you a bit of an example at Bank to the Future. So many people at the time were doing illegal securities offering. The famous one was an early Bitcoin adopter who was at the early Bitcoin conferences, a guy that I respect called Eric Voorhees. Eric Voorhees wanted to create a way for people to use Bitcoin to engage in gambling, where everything was transparent on a blockchain, and so you could prove that the casino, as it were, the online casino, wasn't rigging things. And this got real adoption. But in order to seek funding for the Satoshi Dice, it was called, he broke the rules, and that is that he sold shares for those that want to contribute Bitcoin to the company, and later got done by the SEC for doing an unregistered securities offering. Now, years later, we ended up backing Eric Voorhees at Bank to the Future. So we pivoted our business from a bank to a securities business. The reason that we did that is because we knew that there was no way for these companies to get funding, and they were all breaking the rules at the time. And so we played within the rules. We couldn't change the rules of banking, and we recognized that Bitcoin was actually creating the technology to change those rules, and therefore all we needed to do was support the industry. So we created, we essentially spent 3 years working with regulators to change the securities laws so that people could invest online in small quantities, and those that wanted to invest smaller amounts could diversify. And that's when we created new security rule reforms to play within the rules, but then we also had to break the rules slightly. Because securities laws were very understood, we did all the reforms. We then allowed people to invest in securities using Bitcoin. And by using Bitcoin, it was being used as a currency and a payment mechanism for investing in securities. So intelligent breaking of the rules, but playing within the rules, And this allowed us to continue fund many of the companies that made our industry. We're talking companies that became multi-billion-dollar unicorns. We played our small part in funding Bitfinex, Kraken, Coinbase, Bitstamp, Blockchain.com, and many other companies that we did our part of the round by allowing people to slightly adjust the rules, use Bitcoin in order to invest in securities, but play within the rules. And so that is the rules part that you need to play in order to do this. So asking questions, setting a vision, looking for answers where they may not exist, and in unlikely places, and then being willing to break the rules, but play within the rules. The next part of that is really trusting your gut. So trusting your gut becomes important because in every bear market, everyone is going to tell you you're an idiot, particularly the people that bought it at the peak of the market, because the normal people that don't trust their gut, they tend to only buy Bitcoin when everyone else is buying it. And you get those messages when it's right at its peak. They completely ignored you when Bitcoin was down in the bear market. But as soon as it reaches the point where they're being told by the taxi driver, their hairdresser, their makeup artist, their butcher, the baker, their candlestick maker, that they also bought Bitcoin, then they say, hey, you get those messages from your friends that are nothing to do with Bitcoin that message you saying, hey, can I be involved in Bitcoin and how do I buy my first Bitcoin? And I'm like, Jesus, why didn't you ask me when I was telling you about this when the market's down? And then the market, they buy it at the top and then the market crashes and they don't trust their gut because they didn't have intuition. They measure their wealth in fiat currency. See the video that I released yesterday about the different types of buckets of money, the 4 buckets, if you want to understand more about that. And then they sell at the bottom of the market because they need the Bitcoin to be sold into their local currency so they can meet their everyday expenses. The key to trusting your gut is to have an investment hypothesis, and go back to the video that I created yesterday if you want to understand more about managing those buckets so you don't get susceptible to this type of behavior. So you have to trust your gut. And the key to making this work for you is to go through those 4-year cycles rather than, and Bitcoin has historically worked in 4-year cycles, and you need to go through a complete one of those until you can learn how to really trust your gut. So if this is your first one, congratulations, stick through this, give yourself that gift of investing or going yourself through the 4-year cycle in order to build the intuition and the muscle and the resistance that's needed in order to do that. Then and only then, at the end of that, can you, after going through the pain, get to the state of pleasure as well. And so the pleasure comes when you realize the impact that Bitcoin has in the world. Last year I got the opportunity to spend 2 times in El Salvador. The traditional media are doing all the pain things, saying it's a failed experiment, that the government's lost loads of money. They've lost 100 million from the money that they've got through. It was all just one crazy thing. They're doing that pain point, which they'll do throughout the bear market, where the government, if you go there, the people on the street, if you can educate them through the 4-year cycles, the difference it can make by introducing savings, money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply back into the equation, then you realize at the end of that, when you get through that 4-year cycle, and we end up with money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply, an exit from the traditional financial system, and choice that I believe makes fiat currencies more honest as we transition to central bank digital currencies. You can allow governments to do their communism and socialism on a blockchain and introduce artificial intelligence that makes it harder to own your own money, harder to spend your own money, and harder to have money based upon a fixed supply as they algorithmically change it based upon the economic policies, as you get this modern monetary theory, fiscal and monetary merge that I talked about all those decades ago, or that decade ago in my book, Bank to the Future. Which was really, I mean, in 2011, it was, I started writing it in 2010. It predicted what became central bank digital currencies, the first published book in the world to include Bitcoin. The only thing it really got wrong was privacy, and that's why I'm now writing my book on all the different monetary cycles and how you can integrate that into your life for individuals, companies, and countries. Getting back to that this year. But at the end of it, you get that pleasure of knowing that you gave and you contributed your part to the world of what I believe is a real paradigm shifter. And the paradigm shifter is digital hard sound money. Digital hard sound money, the benefits, the net benefit of that to society, of people being able to have their own freedom to own their own money in self-custody, no matter what a government is doing, no matter what a central bank is doing, no matter what a CBDC is doing, the ability for people to opt out and exit, no matter where they are, no matter what border they cross, no matter what, is a net benefit to society that every politician in the world should strive to achieve for their people. You also get the benefit of the compromise, as it were, all transactions transparently on a blockchain, plus the ability to people to transact peer-to-peer with no censorship in the middle. That is freedom to transact, is freedom of speech. And if countries like America believe in the Constitution and the amendments, then this is a constitutional right. Now, I remember the original Constitution did say that money should always be backed by gold, a commodity. So it's already breaching the rules that one of the greatest pieces of literature and rulemaking that's ever been written. For that. And finally, the ability to protect your wealth and store value over the long term by having hard money. Yes, it's got a speculative nature because there's still some uncertainties around it. But over those 4-year cycles, everybody has had the ability to protect their wealth, store their value, put savings back into the equation, and go through Austrian economics, wealth creation, so that they can then contribute, as I was talking about in the 4 different buckets yesterday. So the ultimate pleasure comes at the end when everybody gets to experience that. And I hope that everybody goes through the cycle that I've personally been through. I believe it's still early adoption phase right now. And to live in a world where you have the ability to own your own money, freedom to transact, which is freedom of speech, and be able to combat yourself and feel less financial anxiety as a result of digital hard sound money being able to combat inflation, despite the fact that everyone will be telling you it's not at the moment. We get our real next test as we go through a recessive environment. Remember the videos that I released, it was 2009 and uploaded in 2011 that I predicted the Great Depression of the 2020s. And in 2020, I did that on retirementplanb.com, where I got everyone prepared for the Great Depression of the 2020s. You'll hear talks about recessions, cost of living crisis, and the only way they can combat the Great Depression of the 2020s is by creating more inflation, more destruction of currency, and rolling over the Ponzi scheme. The only way to combat that is to deleverage. They can only deleverage by printing a central bank digital currency which is not backed by debt, and taking out the debt that's within the banking system, because banks create money. The problem with that, as I talked about in my book, Bank to the Future, is it takes away more privacies and more freedoms, and money creation and the government become merged into one. At the moment, it's done through debt by a private bank. But when you merge those into one, then you get the ultimate power, and the impact that that has on our privacies and freedoms, and therefore we need that opt-out. And so it's a really compelling vision to be able to support adoption in your way, with your unique skills, with your unique sets, but just accept those different things that I talked about in this video, and you can bring more freedom to more people as a result of giving people freedom to transact, freedom of speech, and freedom to have a fixed supply away from central bankers and governments, and freedom to self-custody and own your own money. Everybody deserves it, no matter where they are in the world, no matter what suppressive regime or supportive regime they live in, and it keeps the whole system more honest. I look forward to bringing that to more people, more companies, more countries. And always remember, you're alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Some are doing really, really bad and it's really, really painful. Others are doing really, really well. I want you to stay on the right side of the change so that you can support those people that need your help. And I'll continue to create videos and content throughout this whole process, whether it's more in-depth financial things. Let me know in the comments below what you would like me to cover in future videos, because I'm creating this content for you, holding me accountable to work out each morning. So check, if I don't check in, then you know I haven't worked out. And I will see you on the other side. We're doing it with peace, we're doing it with love, we're doing it with unity. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.